So welcome. We'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're dialing in for. I did a quick glance at the registration list before the call, and I was so excited to see people from countries all around the world. So thank you for being here. My name is Rose Spitzer. I'm the Community Director for Pledge 1%. I'm going to kick us off with a few minutes of intro, and then we're going to dig into this AMA. So first and foremost, I just wanted to say congratulations to all of you for taking that first step with Pledge 1%. You've made a great decision, not only for the communities that you support, but also a great decision for your business. Studies show that top talent are always looking for companies that have heart and culture. And in that same vein, customers want to work with companies that show compassion and are involved in their community. So Pledge 1% organizations see benefits like attracting talent to their ranks, lower attrition rates, and additional revenue. So you've made a fantastic decision, and we're here to help you leverage your assets for good and enable your employees with a plan and the resources that they need to be successful. Just by taking the pledge and being here today, that makes all of you drivers of the movement. Your example can help shift the culture of business and encourage companies to take a stand and take the pledge. So thank you for all that you're doing. For those of you who've been around for a while, you might have noticed that Pledge 1% reached out at the beginning of the year, and we did surveys and calls, and we were putting together this really robust plan for this year. And that's kind of where this AMA is coming from. We heard from you that you wanted more robust content. You wanted a clearer journey, centralized self-service location, and then the ability to kind of browse through resources and learn not only from the Pledge 1% team and resources, but also having that deeper connection and relationship with your peers, the opportunity to understand who's doing this work, how are they doing it, and what best practices can they share that can be replicated. And so I'm really excited to announce that we are going to be launching the Pledge 1% community, and we're going to be checking all of those boxes. And so this is a part of that. This AMA is a part of that plan this year. So we're going to be having a really great onboarding process that you go through. You're going to be able to look at these resources 24/7. We're going to have events like this coming up, AMAs and educational events, hopefully even as things return to normal, some conferences. So basically what I wanted to tell you is you could have not picked a better time to take the pledge, as we are rallying around you with resources that enable connections and collaboration. And I couldn't be having this conversation right now without just taking a quick minute to thank our builders. Our builders are the co-creators of this movement. They're our partners, advisors, supporters of the initiative. With them, they've enabled us to educate and empower our community, all of you, and to hopefully drive impact at scale. So as you think about your questions, I want to go ahead and tell you who I have on deck for the next hour, and then we're going to dig in, and I'll give you kind of the flow. So speaking of a big thank you to our builders, we do have one builder on the call today. Actually, I think we have several I saw kind of pop up, but our guest speaker is a builder. And so we're excited to invite Amanda Lenigan to the call. Amanda has 15 years of cross-sector collaboration in corporate citizenship, volunteerism, philanthropy, and nonprofit management. As head of social impact at Cruise, Amanda is responsible for building meaningful social impact programs that influence how emerging technologies can benefit our communities. Her background also includes nonprofit consulting, fundraising, and she serves on multiple nonprofit boards. So you can tell why I'm so excited to have her on the call today. I've asked Amanda to spend about 10 minutes chatting about how she helped build out the Cruise for Good program, to give some advice and tips for all of you on the call, but also just to hang out throughout this AMA and to help answer questions and share her thoughts with all of you. Also on deck is the Pledge 1% team. So I'll do a quick intro. And like I said, you can think about who to ask your questions to and the expertise that we have on the call. So Kate is our marketing and member engagement manager. Kate is basically Pledge 1%'s in-house social impact expert. She helps Pledge members with their marketing, their launch, and then thinking through programs and strategies. I have Lindsay on the call. Lindsay specializes in member experience. If you had an onboarding call, you most likely had it with Lindsay. She has over 6 years of editing and producing content, so she's really going to be focusing in on that community experience as we launch. And then I also asked Steve to be a part of the panel. So Steve wears a lot of hats. He is our Senior Director of Operation, and he really keeps the engine here at Pledge 1% purring. He manages tech application support, Salesforce administration, data. He's also involved in onboarding. Did I mention he wears a lot of hats? But the reason I asked him to be on the call today is because he has a lot of experience in the nonprofit sector, making him a valuable asset to all of you as you think through how to select the causes and make the most of it. So here is kind of the layout for today. The team members that I've introduced you to, they literally talk to hundreds of members throughout the year. So I've asked each of them to put together 5 minutes based on the questions that they most commonly receive in those calls. And I have a feeling that may answer a lot of questions on this call, hoping so. But then we're going to take continuous questions throughout the call, so you can engage in a variety of different ways. Feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time, obviously. And then when you see we've got some areas that are really designated for questions, feel free to unmute and voice your question. We would love to do that. As you notice, I talk a bit fast, so if you can't get a word in edgewise, you can put your hand up or put in a comment, and I'm happy to take a breath and give you the floor. I put together, like I said, a great panel of experts. Now, if there's a question that you bring up that we can't answer, we'll definitely get back to you. So there's a survey at the end where you can submit additional questions, and we'll be following up on all of those. So I hope that sounds great and that you're ready to dig in. I am going to turn it over to Kate for her 5 minutes around putting your pledge to purpose.
Great, thanks, Rose, and thank everyone here for taking the time to join us this morning, this evening, depending on where you're based. I'm Kate. As Rose said, I work a lot with our members throughout the year on their strategies for launching and growing their programs. And I'm calling today from Hong Kong, so it's my very early morning, so please bear with me. But I'm very excited to start my day this way. So kind of going into things, if you go to the next slide, you took the pledge. This is why you're here. It's an exciting moment, and we're thrilled to have you as part of our community. But usually when companies take the pledge, they get really excited to have that moment, and then they face another one of, now what? What do you do? How do you take this pledge or this commitment and put it to action? And so there's a number of different steps, and I'll go through some of the top ones. And to start, as Rose said, as a reminder, our team is here to help. So no matter, how large you are, where you're located, how you're going to give, we have a variety of plug and play resources, which you can use to start building your program. And a lot of those may focus around the key ways to give, but we also have more playbooks that are focused on topics, additional resources coming out in the community, and you have our team who is always here to help. So you can constantly, just reach out, let us know your questions and ideas. And so we encourage you to use all these tools, which you should have received upon joining through our email and through our phone calls. And if you haven't, let us know. But as you go through these, it's really important to know and to think about our framework is very flexible. So it's there for you. And ultimately, the shape of your program, what you do, how much you give, who you give to, it's entirely up to you. And you should be building something that fits with your business, with your culture, and that's also built to be successful and to scale. So you go through our toolkits, and then we kind of, usually we hear companies like to celebrate how that they've taken the pledge. So if you go to the next slide, Rose. So you can celebrate with your team. This is a great moment just to pause and reflect that you've come this far. You don't have to have a giving program in place. You don't even need to have plans yet. Just taking the pledge is a big step in itself. And it's also a great opportunity to rally your team, to let your community, your customers, your partners, if you have charity partners, letting them know that you did commit to this. And Through that, there's a few different ways that we hear companies do this. Usually people will make an internal announcement that can be through email or maybe at your next team meeting. Again, it's great for your team to hear about your programs first, or again, even that you took the pledge. You can use our logo, which you all should have access to, and if not, let us know. You can add it to your website, your LinkedIn, your social media, your email signatures, your HR forms, wherever you think it is appropriate to share that you've taken the pledge and to really kind of put that stamp or that signal on there that you've committed to doing this. You can also survey your team. So, you don't have to share with the world your plans or that you've taken the pledge just yet. You can just start by asking your team what they think. And if you already have a program in place, use this to check in on them, see what their interests are, see how you might engage them more. If you're just starting, use this moment to get support. Having employees engaged is such a key way to have success in the long term. So again, even just by filling out that form on our website, this is a great moment just to share internally that this is the step that you're taking. Once you celebrate internally, usually, if you can go to the next slide, we then hear that companies are thinking about their partners, especially their charity partners. So again, like I said before, what you give, when, how much, and who it is to, it's entirely up to you. And we know that every company is different. So, we really think it's worth taking the time to think about partners that can also match with your business and your goals. And again, if you're joining Pledge 1% already with a history of giving and some charity partners, that's great. Let them know that you've taken the pledge and that you're formalizing your program. They can help in so many different ways. They can provide you with more data or information or highlights about how your impact has helped them. They can help amplify any announcements. They're just as excited as you are that you've committed to this. And you can also ask them how you can, help. So maybe this is a great check-in to see if, you should be adding a pledge type. So if you have been volunteering with them, maybe now you think about making a small grant or starting to give your product. But lean into the partners that you have to celebrate this moment, to hear from them, to learn, so you can continue to shape and build. If you are still looking for a charity partner or partners, that's totally okay. We actually hear from a lot of companies who are still thinking through this. And so, really, there's a lot of resources online. There's Charity Navigator, there's GuideStar, there's tools out there to help you vet different organizations. Well, when it comes to the cause or the exact organization type, it's sometimes best to look inward again and to think about your team, to think about different organizations or causes that will resonate with either your employees or your customers. So again, this is a great moment to go back to your staff and maybe do a short meeting or a survey. You also can rotate. You don't have to say, here's my charity partner and this is my partner going forward. You can start small with one, see how it goes. You can rotate. A few of our members do one per quarter rotating. You can also give to multiple. So you can divide up your time or your resources and allocate that 1% across a few different organizations. So again, it's all up to you. Ultimately, this will depend on your capacity and your interests. And one pro tip that we always hear is to think about a cause or organization that really speaks to what you do. So one of the great things about Pledge 1% is that it is built to be integrated fully into your business. So if you work in an industry where there is an obvious kind of charity or cause or partner, this could be another way to highlight what you do every day and show how you're working impact into that. So for example, Postmates, their food fight program helps deliver excess food to shelters. So, they're using their fleet in a way that is direct as they use their regular business model to redistribute food and to give back. Next slide. So then, announcing your commitment, and this is where there's lots of different ways to do this, and it'll ultimately depend on your goals. So, you know how you're going to give, or you're thinking about your plans, and you've kind of confirmed where the pledge type that you want. Maybe you have a charity partner, maybe you don't. You don't need to have those details just yet, but it's a great time to celebrate with the world that you've done this. So, we recommend publishing a quick announcement on your blog or social media. For companies who don't really know their full plans yet, this is a great way to do that. It can just be a quick note, mention that things are coming. You can also ask your executives to write a thought leadership piece on why you took the pledge and how this speaks to your values. And again, this can be for companies who are just starting, and it can be more about the why you decided to do this, or for companies who've been doing this for years. We actually find that these pieces, even like a LinkedIn post, tend to get a lot of traction. And it's a great thing to share with your team, with new hires. So this is a really great route to go down, and we have a lot of examples we can share with you. And then you can also put out a formal press release, which can have more details, partners, any highlights to date. Again, you don't have to share these if you're just getting started. We actually see a lot of press releases that are just saying that they took the pledge and taking the moment to celebrate it. So we're happy to help with this. We have templates and language, and we're always looking to share and spread the word. So if you are planning any announcement, even if it's just a social media post, let us know so we can amplify. We find that the more stories and announcements we share, the more we can inspire other companies to join us and do the same. Next slide. So then, you kind of go through all these steps, you take, make your announcement, but it really doesn't stop there. In fact, your announcement's kind of the beginning. You've now made this official. And so now it's time to put the program into action if you haven't already. But, as you move forward and, as time passes, there's so many different ways to continue to build on this momentum to rally your team and partners. So one way is say thank you. Anyone who helps you, any employees who participate, any supporters that you get, make sure you recognize them and thank them. They're taking their time to help you. And again, it's helping build that culture. Report and share any metrics, highlights, photos, create a video. It can be super small. It can be very large. You don't have to be giving away $1 million to, announce or report or celebrate. You can do one volunteer event, and it's still totally worth that celebration. So think about different milestones along the way and how you can reshare those. And then participate in our campaigns. So we, if you haven't already seen our many emails, we organize many different content campaigns throughout the year where we want to feature our members. So we will email you with those opportunities. And again, it's just another way for you to talk about your programs, your team, to share what you're doing and to get more visibility. And then as you move forward and as you kind of refine your plan, you can also think more formally about ways to bake this into your business. So some companies will make Pledge 1% goals a part of their KPIs or performance reviews. Some will integrate it as part of their onboarding process. So, again, you can feel that out as you grow, but the more you can kind of celebrate and make this a part of your regular business, the stronger and faster your program will scale. Next slide. And ultimately, remember, this is fun. It's an opportunity to rally your team. It's to celebrate what you do. It gets to your culture. There's so many benefits aside from the business benefits and retaining and attracting talent and just having a great team. But especially in the past year or so that we've had, being able to talk about impact and connect your company to everything else that's happening in the world and showing that, what you do is more than just business, can be extremely powerful for all of your stakeholders. So there's no real wrong way to do this. You can change your plans as you go, and we are here to help. The important thing is that you just get started and just start with something simple and easy. Next slide.
It's impossible to take you seriously with that slide going.
I really leaned into Fresh Prince for this. I don't know what I was thinking, but I did.
I think that was kind of the end, and then we're going to roll into the next section. So I might just pause here. There were a couple questions that were submitted beforehand that I might at least one of them put out there now. And then if anyone else has questions specifically around what Kate shared or in general, you can post those in the chat. Or like I said, I think I might have muted everyone when we were having the echo issue. So if you can't unmute, put that in the chat and I'll be sure to unmute you. So Kate, the question that was sent in earlier was, I'm looking for some guidance on how to logistically plan my pledge alongside how I can get certified or have some proof that I'm doing this. I want my staff and customers to be aware and excited. So you maybe covered a little bit of how they can do this, but do you want to answer that question for them? And then if anyone else has items that they'd like to tag on, please do.
Yeah, no, we hear this a lot, especially companies who are looking to formalize their program. So maybe it's something they've been doing and now they kind of want to, really get like certified is a great way to explain it. And I think this is where your announcement strategy can really come in, and you can use our assets like our badges and logos, and also lean on us to help you. So sometimes, just putting that image on there makes it official and is recognizable, and people now really know what the Pledge 1% logo signifies. Doing an announcement and a recap to just share officially. And if you can get your executives to support you on that, I think that's a really great way to get your team excited and to show that this is happening. And then we can also share. So again, if you're doing even a social media announcement, or if you publish something, or if you just want to publish something on our blog, we can put that out for you. And then you can share that announcement as almost like verification, since it's coming from us supporting all that you do. We don't have any like formal certificates, but we do have different badges. And so you're welcome to use that to show that this is an official part of what you're doing. Again, even if you're still working out your strategy. And if you need any other tools, we have decks to help you talk about this internally and to get your executives more on board and to share with stakeholders. So we have lots of materials to help you with exactly what you need, depending on the materials you think will work best to do this.
Thank you, Kate. And I will say there's some exciting things coming with community. We're going to have the opportunity and a space there for members to share the projects that they're working on, and those will be public as well. So that is coming too. Okay, so I think there's just maybe one other asking if you have badges we can order for employees.
So we have yes and no. So we have badges, they're all free. You can use any of our, and all of our resources are free. So everything's on the website. And if you can't find it, just contact us. So you can just grab those, use them. You can customize them. We see a lot of companies kind of baking it into their logo, changing their colors. So, you do what you need to build excitement around that. We do have, or in the past around events when we've been in person, we've created hoodies and t-shirts and Yetis and other materials. And if this is something you're interested in, we do have those designs, which we can share for you to order with your local vendors. And again, you're welcome to customize and make it your own. So yes, just let us know.
All right, Kate, I'll let you then go ahead and introduce Amanda and ask a few questions about Cruise for Good.
Yeah, no, and thank you all for these questions. They're great. And I actually think everything that I shared was gathered over talking to members, and we're constantly learning. We're learning every single day, not just about better strategies to do this, but also different ways to have an impact. And so I'm thrilled that Amanda's here because she is the one doing this every day. So she will have way more insight into and answers. And Amanda and her team recently launched Cruise for Good, which is their impact program. And we're just thrilled to have her here to share a little bit more. So thank you, Amanda. So to start, Amanda, can you just tell us a little bit about Cruise for Good? What it is, what your goals are, some background to it?
Yes, I think I might have Amanda muted, which is unfortunate. Let me see if I can find her quick.
Okay, second time's a charm. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Amanda Lenigan, head of social impact and community engagement at Cruise, which is a self-driving car service based in San Francisco. And I have to say, Kate, I know we were on multiple calls together, and I feel like everything that you just shared in terms of your resources and recommendations absolutely was shared with me, and we followed to the best of our ability for our launch. So I'm happy to share kind of what our case study looks like, if that's helpful to you all. But overall, I'm just really grateful for the Pledge 1% community and the movement that really creates this easy mechanism through which it was very clear to our leadership that there was a way to commit our resources. And in our case, it's joining the builder movement and also committing 1% of our product in terms of our autonomous vehicle to our communities and social impact. And I think as being in an emerging sector, it's even more important because we have the chance to build from the start a new technology, a new way of influencing change in our communities. And hopefully we can also, be a part of doing that for our industry and our peers. So appreciate the opportunity and all the guidance that you've given us.
And I'm just curious why, and also when did you decide to take the pledge, during this process as you were planning the program?
Yeah, so we are a relatively early stage company. Cruise is focused on building the world's most advanced self-driving vehicles. And that's a new thing, right? So you don't see these in your neighborhoods every day. But it's important to the company because we really envision a safer transportation system that's better for the environment, more accessible. And so core to our mission is this concept of how do we ensure that everyone in our communities really benefit from the access and connection that this new form of transportation can provide. And so when we think about social impact and how that can play a role, to me, it's a natural extension of our core mission. And the opportunity to formally join Pledge 1% really came as a result of the pandemic. So at the height of the pandemic, or when things really, I guess not at the height, at the beginning, which was last, March, we, a couple of weeks into shelter in place, heard from our local food bank that there was a huge surge in need from individuals who were primarily homebound because of their increased risk of not being able to go to the food bank. So serving low-income seniors and meeting that increase in demand was a challenge. At the same time, we had a fleet of autonomous vehicles available and not being used or not being tested throughout the city. So almost overnight, in a couple of weeks, we were able to join the San Francisco Marin Food Bank's effort, along with another nonprofit, SF New Deal, to really help them think about scaling their deliveries from a few hundred families to about 12,000 individuals a week. And so we basically repurposed our fleet for that. And out of that partnership, so now we've delivered over 1.4 million meals since last spring. That created the case and the example of how do you create a positive impact on your community? How can autonomous vehicles be something that really produce value right away to those who need us most? And so my job was really to capture that and communicate the opportunity that we had to solidify this as a core part of our mission and DNA as an emerging company and industry. So a couple months into this, we made the case to leadership who, to our credit, to the leadership's credit at Cruise, and also to the credit of the nonprofits that we've partnered with, there was just a lot of trust in building those relationships and transparency and wanting to continue to serve our communities. So making the commitment to Pledge 1% and formalizing that commitment, I feel like that was more of putting a bow around what was already happening. But I think that the value in doing that is now, as we see, recovery and we think about moving to other markets, our commitment is now baked in. So now the conversation is not how we engage in the communities. It's really, you know, where do we go next, right? What else can we do? So hopefully that's helpful, but it really was an organic kind of crisis response that came about, that we were able to translate into a longer term kind of strategic commitment for our company.
Yeah, it's been very exciting to watch and to hear all about the impact that you've had, and especially over the past year. And you recently had a very exciting announcement to share all that you're doing. Can you speak a little bit more to that, like what the planning process was, how you share that you were a Pledge 1% member and that you are formalizing this program?
Absolutely, and it's thanks to this partnership and the thought leadership and partnership from your team and advice that you also gave, Kate, that we shaped our announcement. But really, we wanted our launch to center around ensuring that our stakeholders and community understand who we are and that we're dedicated to not only safely connecting people through this new form of transportation, but ensuring that everyone in our community benefits from the emerging technology. So our objectives were building visibility for our partners in this movement, establishing Cruise as a committed, leader in our communities, and also creating pride and momentum internally around this. And I think the tactics for what we ended up doing, which followed your advice, was centering on an event. So we had an event for our formal announcement hosted with Axios, and it included the Secretary of Transportation and the San Francisco Marin Food Bank CEO, as a part of a broader conversation around the future vision for transportation equity and how emerging industries can really meet community need. And I think that grounded our commitment in a much larger conversation, which was an important one to have and to continue. But then tactically, we also did a blog from our CEO, and you all reposted that on your, Pledge 1% platform. We created some assets, including our a video, which really elevates our nonprofit partners' voices, and some other assets like the one I'm debuting here. We have internal Zoom backgrounds for all of our employees, LinkedIn headers, just some easy, fun ways for everyone to adopt this commitment and really feel that sense of pride as an employee, and hopefully as a future recruit as well. That, this is certainly something we want to lead others in our industry towards, but it is differentiating for Cruise at this time. So we hope that, our future talent is attracted to this aspect of our mission and this commitment that we've made as well.
Yeah, that's great. And did you find any of those steps like particularly powerful, or is there any tip that you have for a member who's looking about how to announce and share their program?
I think internally it was powerful to do a preview with employees. So we did an all hands, and they got to see under the cover of what we were hoping and planning to unveil first. I didn't know about the Pledge 1% Yetis, so I would have included that. But I think the having your employees really be included can be meaningful, and in some cases for you all customers as well. I think externally, I've found it really valuable to have the nonprofit partner voice be a part of our launch. I think in our case, the leadership at San Francisco Marin Food Bank can really speak most powerfully to what this commitment means for our local community and paint the picture for why this is important. And ultimately, that's who we're looking to serve and elevate anyway. So I think we can talk all we want about strengthening pathways, delivery and transportation pathways for nonprofits, but if you're able to bring in the partner voice, I think that's powerful. And I did, even though it was more work, I think the events model creates a moment in time to rally around. So that allowed us to line up all of our other, video launch and the whole campaign around our external launch, all centered on that moment and those voices that we brought together across sectors to talk about these issues and how we were committing. So that's more than one moment that was powerful, but I do think your tips early on, we followed fairly closely and were valuable for us.
Yeah, and that event and launch moment, that was a great moment for us too. We were so excited to see everything build up to that and to be able to share and to celebrate with you. So it really does, it can be work, but it also has, the Pledge 1% program also means making sure that you're pausing and reflecting on the values and all that you're doing. And you guys did a really great job with that with your announcement. Final question, because I'm sure other people have questions for you, is just if you had one tip or piece of advice, especially for people who are just kind of thinking through what to do, what would that be?
That's a tough one because I'm still so early in this journey. And I would say activating your leadership and CEO voice is something that I learned from your movement and the equity commitment. So that's something that's powerful for us because I think when you have that level of leadership committed and speaking about this, it really becomes ingrained and owned by the company.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I think, Rose, are there other questions for Amanda?
I don't see any in the chat right now, but feel free to put those in. Amanda, you'll be sticking around to the end of the AMA, correct? And
Yep,
we can
absolutely.
have additional questions. I have to tell you, I love your background. That's very clever, at the Cruise for Good background. And just for everyone as well, there is a video about Cruise for Good on the event website. So if you want to step out and take a look at that, it's great, and it has their partner in it as well. So a great example. Thanks so much, Amanda.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, again, feel free to put questions in the chat or let me know if you would like to unmute since I muted everyone. I think at this point, we'll go ahead and move on to Lindsay. Lindsay's going to talk a little bit more around activating your pledge and digging into the pledge types. So Lindsay, I'll hand it over to you.
Sounds great. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay. You may have seen my name in your inbox before, but it's great to meet you. I just want to take a minute to emphasize that even though we're featuring some tech companies and we're based in San Francisco, Pledge 1% is a global movement. You saw it in our chat. There's people from Peru. There's people from Australia. Good day to all of you. And I talk with people from companies like one-man shows all the way to 12,000 people. So it really is a movement for everyone. And I have some case studies to feature today, but we are coming out with playbooks that will feature more. So let's talk about how to actually activate your pledge and do some social good. Pledge 1% splits its pledge types into 4 groups: time, product, profit, or equity. And the reason that we break it down like this is because businesses have all sorts of assets that they can use to help nonprofits. It's not just about money. It's your employees' brains and their time. It's what you're selling. It's there's a lot of different ways to help. So even if you're not in a place where you can give money, there's still a lot of good you can do. Most of the calls that I do with new members really focus on time or product because it's sort of a nice first step. And you might find that as you start to give one type of pledge, you expand to give more, and then it really becomes part of the foundation of how you do business. So over these next slides, I'm going to talk about different ways that companies can pledge time, product, profit, and just briefly touch on equity, but we have some great resources on that as well. So 1% of time. 1% of time equates to like 2 to 4 business days a year. What I like to tell new members about time is it's very important to establish a cadence. There's a lot of times that companies can give like a volunteer event. Maybe someone's niece is having a fun run, or it's the holidays and you want to have a social good event. But what can happen is sometimes that makes your strategy a bit more reactive instead of proactive. You're doing events as they come. If you want to make giving back into the rhythm of your business, we really think it's important to establish a cadence. So that could be something like one day a quarter, or like a giving back week. That's something we see that's really popular for bigger companies. For consulting companies, you could even do a few hours in the afternoon once a month. I call this First Fridays. Maybe you have a nonprofit client and you give them a few hours of your time on the first Friday of the month. Anything with a cute name. I I'm sure Kate can tell you can help, and it just becomes part of who you are and what you do, not something you're scrambling to put together at a moment in time. So we'll go to the next slide. In terms of volunteering time, there's a couple different ways you can think about it. Let's go to the gray columns first: skilled time and general time. Skilled time involves using your professional skills to give back. So that could be some sort of skilled volunteering or pro bono or discounted work. Maybe, I think I saw a CRM company in there. Maybe it's helping a nonprofit with their marketing efforts. You could even, if you don't want to, if your product doesn't necessarily speak to a nonprofit, you could build some sort of different product or content that might help them. For the CRM company, it's like how to market your nonprofit more effectively. You can even do mentorship opportunities to underrepresented communities. General time is something that doesn't involve your professional skill set, but can still be very helpful. Think about like volunteering to plant trees in a park or serve food to your homeless communities. You can even have nonprofits teach your employees about a certain skill and then have an action after. Let's say if you want people to get out the vote, you can have a nonprofit come speak at your company and then make phone calls to help people register after. That's a more political example, so you probably wouldn't want to do that, but something to think about. Another thing to think about is whether your culture is more independent or collaborative. When I say independent, maybe you want to empower employees to pick their own way to volunteer and their own causes. That's something called a volunteer time off policy, or VTO, where you give them a certain number of hours a year to spend volunteering. Or maybe you have a holiday coming up where they should do some good. For example, in the US, it's Juneteenth is coming up, and Pledge 1% is giving employees a day to go out and help their communities instead of coming to work. I think that's a very good way to spread the word. Another way to think about it is collaborative. Do you want your team to come together and do good? You can have a group activity of some sort. You could even make it virtual. We have some members that bring in their kids and make Christmas cards, or holiday cards of any type really, or notes to senior homes. You could even have some sort of competitive element or hackathon. These are all a lot of ideas, so that's why they're on a slide that you can look at later. You also don't have to choose one or the other. Many companies do some volunteer time off and some collaborative events you can do as a group. So if you think, well, I can't just have time off, there's still a lot of things you can do to donate time. All right, let's go to the next slide. So next we're going to talk about product, and that seems pretty straightforward, but there's actually a lot of ways you can donate product. We heard from Cruise that they donated 1 million meals and to nonprofits. That's a very direct way to donate their product. You don't actually have to donate your product 100%. You could offer a discount for nonprofits. Find a way to verify that they're a nonprofit. For example, Canva, which I believe is an Australian company, for all you Australian members out there, they offer a discounted license for nonprofit organizations to use their marketing software, for design software. And then you could also make a separate version of your product that is specific for a nonprofit. That can be another way that you donate or product or use your product to do good. Let's keep going. And then finally, profit. Profit is the most straightforward in a lot of ways. 1% of your profit, donations to a nonprofit. But there's also a couple different ways that people calculate this. Pledge 1% really wants you to make your social impact your own. So, it doesn't have to be gross profit or net profit. You could do 1% of a certain product sold. For example, endangered species chocolate, each chocolate goes to a separate endangered species, right? So one for maybe this elephant here or something. I think I also saw that there was an e-commerce website. Some companies have you round up to the nearest dollar, and that extra can go to a nonprofit. That can be very popular for e-commerce companies. like this upon transaction model. We have other consultancies that every time they nab a big client, they work together to set aside 1% of the money from that to pick a nonprofit together that they want to donate to. That can be a great way to strengthen relationships. Or you can have some sort of employee matching program where you set aside a certain amount of money and your employees themselves can pick their own nonprofits to donate to, and you match that donation. That's great for companies that are a bit more independent and self-driven culture. Last slide coming up. And finally, we have equity. Equity can be very complicated. So luckily we have a playbook that kind of details everything that you would ever need to know, including case studies. And we have an in-house equity expert that can answer your questions. So I'm gonna skim over that today, but I would love to hear your questions or what you're doing for time, product, profit, and equity if you feel like it.
I love all those examples, Lindsay. I spent kind of the first few months when I was here at Pledge 1% sitting in on Lindsay's onboarding calls, and I love all of your creative ideas. We did have one question that was submitted in advance that I'd like to answer on here, or like to have put to the panel. It says, we would love to learn how other organizations are organizing volunteer days with the minimum business disruption. We are thinking of setting up specific days for employees to participate in shortlisted social impact initiatives sponsored by our company. What do you think, and what are your other thoughts?
Well, I love the idea of offering a list of opportunities that employees can participate in. For something like a volunteer time off, or just giving people time to volunteer, lots of times people won't necessarily take that first step on their own. So having a company give a list of volunteer times or a specific time to do it can make it very helpful. So kudos to you for that step. I would say to think about setting aside a certain time specific where the number one goal is volunteering, not business. That can be a day, that can be an afternoon, that can be sort of that a few hours at the beginning of the month, like we were talking about for that first Friday activity. But I think trying to do business and your volunteering is going to be sort of a setup for failure. But if you really reserve a certain chunk of time where your whole purpose is doing good, that can be very helpful. Another thing to think about is kind of the business goals behind your social impact efforts. Like, these can make you feel closer as a team, or if you have an executive involvement, this can help cement some elements of your company culture. So you can tailor however you want to give back time to meet those goals. Oh, and it looks like we have a question from Orlando. Do companies usually choose 2 1% pledges to support? And can you choose one? Well, luckily for you, Orlando, you can choose as many or as few as you want. We have plenty of companies that just do time or just do profit. We have companies that do it all. What it's really about is getting you to give back in whatever way makes sense. And 1% is a great number, but any percent is more than 0. So feel free to pick as many or as few as you want. Just give back. Any other questions from the team? I feel like a talk show host here. Oh, here we go. We have another comment from Amanda. Amanda, if you would like to speak instead, I'm sure people would love to hear your thoughts. Unless we have
I was just, yeah, I was muted. I was just chiming in on the volunteer question. I used to run Charles Schwab's employee and volunteer engagement programs, and that was 40,000 people across 300 cities. And we definitely had to consider how to balance the business need. So one thing that we did for that was creating staggered shifts. So if we had call center employees, for example, we would offer different volunteer opportunities each day at a variety of shifts. And then those teams and managers of those teams would agree on what percent or volume of employees they could release at a given day. So it was a little complicated, but I think there is a way to understand your business need and and still design so that you aren't interrupting a full day of business if you are consumer facing to where you need to be available, or some portion of your staff needs to be available. And my other thought was, if you create a framework and allow individuals and teams to run with that framework, they could design it around a team building event that at a time that works for them. And so there's a couple different strategies that have worked well for me in the past I thought I'd comment on.
How lucky are we to have someone who ran a 40,000 employee volunteer and now runs their own impact at Cruise? That's such a helpful insight. We do have Steve next talking about how to pick your nonprofit cause, but I'd love to take a few more minutes to answer questions if that's okay with you. Rebecca has a question about how to get a budget to donate or run a 1% program. That is always tricky, I'm sure. I was wondering, Kate, did you have any ideas about how to kind of isolate some of those assets? Or I don't know if Steve does as well.
Yeah, I think it, again, it'll depend on your goals and your program, but I think how to isolate those assets. I think, sorry, can you rephrase the question? I'm trying to think about the best way to.
So it's in the chat. What are some successful models for getting a budget? And I will say, just while you're thinking, one way is we actually need executives to take the pledge. If you're like, we need executives on board to take the 1% pledge. So that can be a good way, is to just get executives involved from day one and be like, hey, we need you to be a part of this. And another way is to point to other people within your industry that are doing this sort of program and just emphasize that it is important. Those are some of my thoughts, but I don't know if you have any more, Kate.
Yeah, we are actually, and the reason why I pause is we're actually building out a tool for this right now as part of our Getting Started playbook. And so that's in development. We're really excited to be sharing that shortly. And there are different models, so it depends on your organization, the support that you have, and you also again want to use these milestones and moments to build and to even if you start with something small, to advocate for yourself so that you can get more resources to run the program, whether that's resources to hire or to do an event. And one of the key ways, again, maybe you have a budget set aside, maybe you can leverage your product donations and create a discount line, which then can help fund your program. Maybe you don't have any resources, but you can piggyback onto work that's happening with your marketing department, or you can get your IT team to help with your certain aspects of your program, or look internally to pull help and resources. Again, it really depends and it varies widely, and there's a lot of different models and places to pull from. We will have more of that shortly, but I think if you want to email us separately, we can talk more specifically about your company structure and the resources that you have internally, or that you might be able to allocate to go specifically towards this.
It is nice about Pledge 1% that there are multiple pledges. It's not just money. So if you don't have a budget, you can still get back. But let's move on to Steve on this last section.
Hi, everybody. So I'm here to talk briefly about how to choose and work with a nonprofit. One of the reasons I got assigned this part of the presentation is because I've actually worked in the nonprofit world exclusively the last 12, 15 years or so in several different nonprofits. So I come to this from that perspective of what it's like to be a nonprofit with a company showing up saying, we're here to help. And so how can you kick that relationship off in the best manner? Get the next slide. So one of the things you want to think through is this slide is useful because you can kind of really take each of these on their own, but you also want to find a good intersection between all of these. So a lot of companies it's pretty common to go through the practice of identifying your core values of why you exist in the world, why the company was founded in the first place. And once you've got those articulated, revisit those, take a look to see is there anything that now you're putting the lens of how this company can help a nonprofit. When you put that lens over your current core values, is there anything that pops out that says, oh, we we care about this, or we have this particular value we want to really emphasize. Is that something you can lean into as you think through the types of nonprofits you'd like to support? Another thing to think through is on the industry side, does your nonprofit lend towards something specifically? You heard earlier from Amanda saying they're in the transportation industry, and so they saw a need for transportation amongst with a marine food bank. But there are other directions they could have gone to, where getting people to interviews or that kind of thing. I think one area which often surprises people when I mention this on calls is ask what relationships you already have. So you may have some nonprofit clients that you've actually already been working with, but you'll be surprised at how many of your employees are already engaged with nonprofits themselves that they've already doing on their own time. Or perhaps they've been impacted by the work of a nonprofit. They may have had a close family member that has received support from a cancer society or something of that nature. So if you can identify, it's good to do just a quick gut check of what nonprofits have we touched already, not only through the work that the company does, but also through all of your employees at the company, which nonprofits are meaningful to them. And that will give you a good sense of where the wind is blowing, as it were, within your company as to which kind of nonprofits or which kind of organizations to support. And then finally, one consideration is location. If you're headquartered in a major city somewhere, if you operate in a specific marketplace geographically, you probably want to think about supporting nonprofits that work in a similar location. Maybe if we go on to the next slide. So once you've kind of identified what kind of nonprofit or what kind of cause you want to support, and you're starting to see a pattern there amongst your employees or what types of things they gravitate to or how your company is orientated, then you want to start thinking, researching and finding nonprofits that actually fit that criteria. So you've identified the cause, maybe it's early education. And then you want to stay local. So find the nonprofits that fit that criteria, that have that explicitly as part of their mission. And then you can go to some of these websites. Charity Navigator is a good one to go and actually get an objective view of that nonprofit. They show the financials, key employees. It's kind of like the Crunchbase or the PitchBook for nonprofits. So it gives you a good oversight on those nonprofits. Taproot is a good organization that helps facilitate volunteering within nonprofits. So if that's a particular interest and you want to use the skill set within your company to help nonprofits will post projects that they need help on, and people with that expertise can sign up and actually then get kind of matched up with those nonprofits. And TechSoup is a great organization that facilitates companies that have a technology product that they want to put out in the marketplace, and they've created their own marketplace. It actually, I believe it started with Microsoft when they first gave away their tools, Microsoft Word, Excel, etc., to nonprofits. They needed a platform to distribute those technology products. And now this has grown into this huge network of technology products that nonprofits can go to TechSoup and literally buy, some very low price, and some are actually they're buying for nothing, access to those technology tools. The other thing they do is they will actually verify those nonprofits for you. They're able to do that in, I believe, 200 plus countries around the world. I think we're running short on time, so let's move to the next slide. So a couple of key things to think about. Nonprofits, they have a unique relationship with your company, but also think of them at the same level as you would your key clients. Build that relationship with the people in that nonprofit. It's really critical to the success of any business relationship, and that includes the nonprofits you're working with. Part of the Pledge 1% model is kind of putting together a package of why we're doing this and how we can help nonprofits. This is what we've got to offer as a company. So you can package it up, you go and present it to your nonprofit. And guess what? It may fit what they need. It may not. You may need to tweak it a little. You may need to sit down and listen to, we want all of our employees to volunteer. We can give you 50 hours a month. And the nonprofit says, great, this Saturday night, we've got an event. Can they all show up? You say, oh, well, actually, it's got to be within 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. So you need to have a conversation to figure that piece out. I mentioned earlier, starting locally, getting that personal relationship is really important to the success of the program, because you're going to learn from the nonprofit how to continually adapt your program to make it better and make it more viable and more successful, and therefore have a deeper impact. And then think through about how you are supporting each other. Nonprofits just need help, and companies can be very, very powerful in that aspect. I'm over time, Rose, so I'll let you kind of pick up where we go from here.
Oh, Steve, I feel like we could do a whole session just on how to pick your nonprofit and how to properly support them. And but I am, just for those who have to drop, because I know we're a couple minutes over, I'm just going to flash this slide quickly. So kind of you're thinking next steps, where do I go from here? I hope the team gave you some really great things to think about. If you haven't had your one-on-one call with the team, you can do that, set that up, and the links will be in here. We'll send that out after the recap. All those resources that Kate mentioned, those are all out there. Eventually, they're going to be in a really great community, but they're still out there for you to browse through right now. And so the link for that is, of course, in this deck, and again, will be sent out. There are all kinds of other things you can get involved with, committees that are going on, early access for the community we keep talking about. And then I just mentioned, I think we could dig into each of these areas and talk for a full hour. And guess what? That's exactly what we're hoping to do. So we're hoping to extend this AMA monthly. And here are some of the topics that we're thinking of covering, kind of digging into these. Each of the different pledges, but I would love for you to tell me what topics you would like covered. We'll be sending out a survey afterwards where you can put additional questions. So if your question didn't get asked here, I know the team has a few minutes to stick around, so please do that if your question didn't get answered. But if you think of other questions, you're going to get that survey. You can put those in there, and we'd love to follow up, help provide the resources and maybe examples that can help you to be successful. So thank you, everyone, so much for being here today. Like I said, we'll hang out for a little bit. But if you have to drop, thank you so much. I'll put all the emails up there as well. Okay, so let's
look like we had some questions potentially for Steve, for anyone who wants to stick around. I'll also just briefly say that if you attended this call, that does count as taking the pledge if you're an executive. So you can schedule a one-on-one call, but you don't have to, because a lot of this information will be covered. Steve, there were some questions for you in the chat.
Yeah, I see Jason's actually still on the call, so maybe I'll address his question about the kind of the generational difference between grassroots, as he's calling it, versus top-down decision of which nonprofits to support. I think part of the volunteering opportunity is to provide those provide your employees with a chance to maybe volunteer to the nonprofits they want to support and receive the credit for it, as it were. So having a way for them to kind of log that volunteer time and hours can be really empowering for employees. So that's definitely something to think about it if you're hearing that employees want to choose their own nonprofit. Think about setting it up that way. Now, there are some things where it's kind of very top down, so then maybe there's a sponsorship piece that comes into play with your support of that nonprofit. I used to work in the music industry and symphony orchestras. A great venue for the CEO, VP would come and sit in the box or what have you, but they would also maybe they sponsor an after concert event, or maybe they sponsor an education program, and employees could come and benefit from the company supporting that particular nonprofit. So there's lots of nonprofits do lots of events. It's a great way for them to fundraise, and there's ways for companies to be really effective in engaging with the nonprofits in those events, and allowing their employees to participate and get real meaning from that relationship.
Steve, it looks like there's also a question from Suman. I hope I'm saying this right. I'll repaste it in the chat so you can see it right away. But he's looking for, do you see it? He's looking for ways to find more nonprofits to volunteer his services for. They already work to help some nonprofits with cyber threat monitoring, but he wants to find out how to help more.
Yeah, good question, Suman. So, you know, it's one thing to think about is if your product is something you think is valuable for nonprofits, I definitely suggest you think of, you know, your product is, you're probably already thinking of marketing your product in various verticals, you know, in the industry verticals. You know, this is how we reach the people in the tech industry. This is how we reach the people in manufacturing or what have you. So also think in a nonprofit world in the same way, and you may even have your CEO support having targets for reaching out to a certain number of nonprofits, just like they would with other industries or other verticals that you're trying to do business with. That's what we're really talking about when you're embedding this into the business model. You're making a commitment as a company that we want to spend this much of our resources supporting the nonprofit community. And that's a really powerful way to do that, is to sort of embed those incentives within the structure of the company itself. So, and then the other thing too is just realize that nonprofits, particularly a lot of companies that are offering services to nonprofits, are offering services that nonprofits don't even know exist. And you have to market to them just like you do everybody else. You know, and they may actually be a little harder to reach because they're not in the same circle of influence that you're used to the customers you usually talk to are. So you do have to be deliberate about identifying who you want to reach out to, and have a key strategy for how you reach them, just like you would any other vertical.
Thank you, that makes sense.
Steve, do any of the organizations you mentioned before, like Taproot or anything like that, could that help you for reaching out or finding nonprofits that need your services?
Yeah, I mean, the Taproot is a great one for kind of those individual nonprofits. So, you know, it tends, like, you know, a Taproot project might be, we want to launch a website and we need a web developer, we need a graphic designer, we need, you know, somebody who can do strategy or what have you. And so, you know, that's a way for them to sort of build a team of people that may all come from one company, but very often it comes from different companies, which is, so, you know, it's kind of designed for that perspective but I'm sure they have programs too for companies to interface with them. I'm not familiar with whether they do or not. Maybe other team members do, but I'm familiar with it from the individual volunteering perspective.
I'll check those websites as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Steve. I think we might have to reschedule you. I'm thinking another AMA is in your future, digging in on nonprofits. Anyone else? I noticed there's still a few people on the call. Were there some other questions before our team before we drop off here? Okay. Well, thank you all so much for sticking around these last few minutes. I hope you got some inspiration and ideas to put into place in your organizations, and I hope to see you on the next one. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.